5. Order. Order. I've called for some order now. Question number 5, Metiria Turei.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Tēnā koutou te whare. My question is to the Minister of Finance and asks, I aha nā puna Pūtea Tahua a te Minita Hanga Whare, Whakawhiwhi Whare, a te Minita Pāpori take Whare, me te Minita take Monī, kia ia mō te Pūtea Tahua o te tau 2016, e pāna ki ngā raruraru mō te whiwhi whare.
Speaker, there's no translation.
Order. I certainly received an interpretation, and it is as written on the sheet. I can ask if the Minister's happy to proceed, otherwise we can have it put.
Speaker.
But I certainly got the interpretation.
Speaker,
the Honourable Bill English.
On the basis it's a question on the sheet, the member will just have to wait for the release of all the budget papers for the details about that. But I can confirm for the member that there were 11 successful bids, a $258 million package for more social housing places in Auckland, investment in Tamaki redevelopment and support for 3,000 emergency housing places and a new special needs grant, $100 million injection into the development of surplus Crown land in Auckland, a $12.6 million increase over the next 4 years for Maori housing, and an additional $36 million for the Healthy Homes and Warmer New Zealand initiatives. So in total, over $400 million of new spending on housing-related issues.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Did the Minister for Social Housing bid for more money in Budget 2016 for the building of more state houses to help address Housing New Zealand's 4,500 person waiting list?
The Honourable Bill
Well,
English.
Mr Speaker, as it happens, Housing New Zealand has got probably one of its largest ever capital investment programs over the next financial year, probably close to $1 billion. But of course, that's not the answer, not the only answer. It is part of an answer. For the member needs to understand now the way the system works is we don't have to wait for the Housing New Zealand to build a new house. MSD can go and procure social housing from community housing providers and developers so that it can place people on the waiting list. And in Auckland, the problem is not a lack of money, it's a lack of houses.
Point of order, sir.
Order. Point of order, Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question was very specific about whether the Minister of Social Housing bid for a specific purpose that was not addressed in the Minister's answer.
It's a very marginal call because there was a figure then given, but I accept the point that the member in her question talked about specifically more state houses. I'm going to invite the member to ask the question again.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Did the Minister for Social Housing bid for more money in Budget 2016 for the building of more state houses to help address Housing New Zealand's 4,500 person waiting list?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, no, because that's not her role. Her role as Minister of Social Housing is to bid for places. Those places can now be secured from community housing providers and developers as well as from Housing New Zealand. As I said to the member, Housing New Zealand has got an extensive investment program, but the real issue in Auckland is not lack of government money, it's lack of houses, because when we go out bidding for social houses, we're competing with providers of emergency houses and with first home owners. And we need more houses on the ground so everyone's needs can be more easily met.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Did the Minister for Building and Housing bid for a state-sponsored build of affordable housing in Budget 2016, a state-sponsored build of affordable housing in Budget 2016, given that everything he's come up with so far has failed to produce affordable housing on the scale that New Zealand families need?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the Minister for Building and Housing bid primarily for money for the use of surplus Crown land. But the member is simply wrong with her second assertion and seems to misunderstand, as the Labor Party does, that even if the government wants to build houses, it can't build one unless Auckland Council agrees to every single step. And to be fair to Auckland Council, they are now seeing 40 new houses completed every day in Auckland, but that number needs to rise to 50 or 60,000. But if the government wants to do a redevelopment, say at Three Kings, it still has to deal with the community group that don't want that redevelopment to occur or want it modified and go through the Environment Court. That's the law of the land.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Did the Minister for Local Government propose anything for housing in Budget 2016 other than blaming Auckland Council for the growing housing crisis driven by National in that city?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the Minister for Local Government didn't put in a housing bid because he doesn't have any capacity to do that. What he is doing, though, is going around the country working with local government, trying to get them more focused on the growth opportunities that come with a growing population, because a number of councils have yet to fully adapt, and I'd give Auckland City Council the credit for lifting the rate of building from about 20 a day 6 or 7 years ago to 40 a day today, and the Auckland construction industry is in its 4th year of 20% compound growth.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Did the Minister for Māori Affairs bid for more funding for marae in Budget 2016 so that they could better house families who are currently living in cars and garages?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, no he didn't, but he certainly did bid for more funding for housing, because the Minister of Māori Affairs wants to help all those iwi who can now see that they can participate as providers of social housing right across New Zealand. And the Māori Party is building a social housing network that will mean that in the future we won't be reliant on one government monopoly, that is Housing New Zealand, to meet the needs of every New Zealander with serious housing need.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Did the Minister for Social Development propose wiping the debt that New Zealanders owe to WINS for emergency housing in Budget 2016, given the many months that beneficiaries are being forced to live in expensive emergency housing?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the Minister of Social Development has pretty good insight into the often complex and challenging aspects of the lives of the people to whom the member is referring. The Minister of Social Development oversees the expenditure of $1.3 billion on accommodation benefit, part of the $2 billion we spend every year subsidising housing. One of the reasons we want to change the RMA and want to see a proper unitary plan in Auckland is to reduce the pressure on government to continually increase subsidies because of poor and misdirected planning that prevents enough houses being built.
Talking doesn't help. Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Did the Minister responsible for Housing New Zealand recommend to Cabinet that his State House sell-off program should be stopped as part of Budget 2016, given that there are 4,500 people on the Housing New Zealand waiting list today?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, no, because that wouldn't help. In fact, what's happening is that there is an increase in the social housing stock in Auckland, primarily because we've been able to change the system to secure houses from organisations other than Housing New Zealand. The selling of state houses has been applied in those areas where there is less demand and certainly not large numbers of people on the register.
Question number 6.